For those of you that don't know me, my name is Trish Maris Claystat. I am the class of 80. I'm the parent of two alumni, class of '09 and 11. I forget. They're been out of college so long. They are wonderful bantams as well. Um, and I have, for the last 11 years, chaired the Women's Leadership Network. We started this council, rather. We started this group as a way to engage alumni with undergraduates and help support their journey and to help support the journey of our alumni. And we've grown the group from about 40 people to over 700. And if any of you or anyone on this call is interested in joining our group, Melissa Bronzino Reagan is who you should contact, and she's going to put her information in the chat so that you can just reach out to her. We are an amazing network of women, and Zoom has been a silver lining for us because we've been able to reach more people. I mean, Lee is coming to us from Denver. We've had women reach out to us as a result of all these Zoom offerings that have never attended an event because they live in a remote place not near Hartford. So this has really been a lot of fun. We wanted to tell you that we have two dates on the calendar coming up right now. Tuesday, March 23rd, we have an event called Women's Rights Across the Globe, our alumni at work. And there's two women, one from Saudi Arabia, I believe, and one from Mali, who are going to be talking about the work that they do. And on Monday, April 26th, we're going to have an event called Words of Wisdom, Women in Leadership, and it's a discussion across 3 generations about the role of leadership in the roles of women, and it features one of our 3 of our members, but Terry Roos, who is a class of 74, I believe. So she's an amazing woman, and it's worth tuning in if you can. Tonight, I want to introduce Lee. We were in the same class together. She is an accomplished cookbook author, chef, public speaker, TV personality, and dear friend. Her bio is so long, it's like hard for me to I couldn't possibly get through it in the amount of time. But let's just start that her first dinner party was when she was 16. And her first cookbook, A Well-Seasoned Kitchen, she wrote with her mother. And her second cookbook, which is called Fresh Taste, she published in 2015. She is won so many awards, I can barely list them. But what I wanted to really tell you what I know about Lee is that the statute of limitations has passed on this so that I can talk about it. It could be called Hibachi Gate in 1978. That would be when Cynthia and Lee decided they would barter cooking in someone's room that had a cooking facility. Of course, a lot of us lived in dorms with, it was a big barter deal to have a refrigerator. This is back in the dark ages. And perhaps the hibachi might have been heated up on a wooden fire escape. I don't know who makes fire escapes that are wood, and perhaps the hibachi did burn through said fire escape, and they had to come up with another way to cook the steak. But anyway, she and Cynthia loved cooking, and Lee made it into an incredible career. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Lee, and let's enjoy the evening. I'm not going to have my cocktail till afterwards, but I can't wait.
All right. Well, thanks, Trish. Thanks. And welcome all my fellow Trinity alums to my Denver kitchen. It's great fun to have you here this evening because that's what I'm all about, is making cooking and entertaining easy, elegant, and fun. And you can tell by Trish's story, I do like fun. I'm sure Cynthia will probably be putting comments into the chat. She's here this evening. For those of you who aren't in the class of 80 and don't know me or Cynthia, we were put together as freshmen at Trinity randomly. I was from Denver, she was from Montreal, and we're still best friends today. So she was my co-chef when we were starting to want to do dinner parties and things when we were in college. as Trish said, I really started entertaining even in high school. I loved having dinner parties. I grew up in a household with a mother who was a consummate cook and hostess. There were always dinner parties in our house growing up, once a week or more. And now what I like to do is share all those fabulous things that I learned from my mom and other chefs and people along the way with you, so you can feel comfortable and fun entertaining in your home. And I know that's been something that's been very difficult for us, but for all of us in the past year. But things are getting a little bit better. We're going into the summer. We're going to be able to start getting together, at least with social distanced gatherings. And one of my favorite things to serve at any cocktail party, but especially one during these type of events where you have to stay social distance, are these 1 and 2 bite appetizers. Nobody's reaching into a shared chip bowl. Nobody's having to use the same spreader to put a cheese spread or something on a cracker. Everybody gets their own little pieces to eat. They're also great even when we come out of this, hopefully by late summer or the fall. They're also really fun to serve at your cocktail party because people don't have to put their drink down again to go dip or to spread. They can just grab these right off of a plate and eat them. They're really delicious and they're really fun. So I'm looking forward to sharing the recipes with you, as well as some of my tips and techniques and things that I've kind of learned along the way to help you, again, with that easy component in your kitchen. So if you, again, I think Trish might have said, but I can't remember. If you have any questions, go ahead and put them into the chat. Everything will go into the chat. You can make comments. If you can't see anything clearly, put it in there. What Trish is going to do is field all those questions. If something needs to really be answered immediately, or it's like you can't see something, she'll let me know. Otherwise, there's going to be a break for a minute or two between each recipe when I kind of clear out the stuff from one recipe and bring in the ingredients for the dish and the cookware or whatever I need for the next one. And then that's when I really have the opportunity to answer a lot of questions. I might, so if I'm running around my kitchen, I can still chat with you. It's not a problem. I wanted to introduce to everybody my husband, Robert, who is my assistant and sous chef this evening. He will be helping me. He's going to help a little. He's the bartender in the household, so he's going to help for sure with the drink and then with a few other things. So you might see him bopping in and out. We also have 2 dogs, so if you start to hear them, he will go and take care of them to make sure they don't disrupt the class. So let's get cooking. I don't want to go over any more introduction. I'll talk a little bit more in detail as we go through, but let's start first with the cocktail. And there is both a cocktail, as you can see in your packets. Grab your recipe packet. Pages 2 and 3 of the full packet have both the cocktail, and then the next page is the mocktail version. So if you want to have something that you can also serve that's non-alcoholic, the beauty of this is other than the alcohol part that you substitute with ginger beer, the rest of the recipe is the same. So it's really easy to kind of make it so you can kind of go both ways depending on who you're having over to your house or what you feel like drinking. So I really love this recipe. It's got a really wonderful blend and combination of flavors. It's got bourbon in it. I'm kind of partial to Jack Daniels. My mother grew up in Kentucky. Bourbon was her drink, a little bit more than mine. I'm more of a vodka girl, but she really loved bourbon and she really loved Jack. So that's kind of my primary selection for the bourbon. I do get some questions about this because there are several people who say, oh, I'm not really a bourbon person. You can make this with rye, which is a little bit less sweet, so kind of a little bit milder. You could also make it with rum. You can make it with vodka. I have not tried it with gin, but it probably would work with that as well. It's a really flexible recipe, and the main ingredients in it are lemon, ginger, rosemary, the bourbon. That's, those are really the primary flavors in this. And they really are very flexible flavors and they'll work with any of those liquors. So if you're making it along, get out your ingredients. If you haven't done that already, get your glasses ready. Somebody asked the question. Thank you very much for doing that. I like to serve it in old-fashioned glasses. can't see this because I put the ice on already, but there is a Trinity logo on here. These are my Trinity glasses. And now, just so you know, if you see me looking down over here at this computer, this is where I control my camera angles. And this handy dandy little thing right here happens to be my iPhone that's going to give you a little bit more of a close-up shot. So we're going to go like this. And so you can see here as well as there. So hopefully you'll be able to see everything. So if you look at the recipe and you saw in your instructions that your make ahead homework was to make a rosemary simple syrup, which I already have in here. That's simply just honey and water and rosemary cooked together until the honey dissolves and blends in really nicely with the water. I usually kind of cook it also till I can kind of smell the rosemary a little bit. Then you just take that off the heat, cover it, and just let it steep to really get that rosemary flavor infused through the cocktail. And so the rosemary syrup is now in the shaker with the ice. And I'm going to add some fresh lemon juice, the bourbon, and the Canton ginger liqueur, which is where the ginger flavor comes from. And the Canton bottle is really, you can find it if, for those of you that haven't gotten it yet, it looks like this. It's a very unique shaped bottle. This is the brand of ginger liqueur I like. There's two. I only know of the two from France. I'm not sure if anybody else is making it. This is my preferred one, in my sense, the one that seems to be more readily available. So that's in there, and then we're going to put in some bitters. If this part all up until here is exactly the same for the mocktail and the cocktail, now you can just put in your bitters. Now, if you're making the mocktail, I'm using lemon bitters here, by the way. You can also make this with orange bitters, which are a little bit easier to find. However, okay, sorry, he's got to go take the dog out. I had a feeling that might happen, but the orange bitters and most Angostura made bitters have alcohol in them. I mean, you're only putting in a few drops, but there is alcohol. So you need to decide if you want to use it. These lemon bitters that I found from Fee Brothers, I'll show you up close if I can figure out where to put it, that I found on Amazon, does not have alcohol. So just FYI on that.
We had a question.
Yes.
Is a shaker or just a glass with ice?
You can do a glass with ice, but you've got to figure out how you're going to cover it and shake it. And you don't have to shake this up. You could just put it in a glass and stir it. But the reason I like to really shake it up is because the ice helps crush the rosemary even more and gets even more of the rosemary flavor. Sorry, I was looking at the wrong place. It gets even more of the rosemary flavor into the drink. And so I just think it adds a little bit more, but if you don't have the shaker, you don't, then you can stir it. You could use a muddler, actually. You know, one of those flat things like you used to make a mojito where that you use, or you're making a mint julep and use a muddler to mash the mint. You could do that. So once you shake all that up together, then you pour it over ice into your glasses. And this kind of a strainer is what Robert always uses when he makes his famous martinis, which are on my website. And I like to use it for this recipe just because the rosemary is still in there, and the majority of the rosemary leaves are not going to go into your drink. You might get one or two, and that's okay. But if you try and strain it through the strainer here, I find the rosemary gets it blocked up, so it kind of doesn't work so well. So anyway, and then I just like to garnish it with a little sprig of rosemary and a slice of lemon. So let me just give it a taste. Oh yeah, that's really good. Really good. And it's really good as a mocktail too. Instead of the bourbon and the ginger, I came up with this thing to use ginger beer. I tried it with soda water, and I tried it with tonic water and I tried it with ginger ale, and this is the ticket. It's just amazing. It's what a mocktail to me should be, which is that it's full of flavors. So you don't want to gulp it, you want to sip it just like a cocktail. And I particularly like this Q brand. I believe I put that in your packets. Because their mixers are designed to be mixers. So the ginger beer is not really designed to be consumed on its own. It's consumed to be in a drink. And I just think it works really, really well in this. Okay, so why don't you put your questions into the chat, and Trish can pass those on to me, and then I am gonna clean this up. Oh, I know one thing I wanted to mention, because I get a lot of questions about sort of kitchen utensils. This is what I like to use to juice my lemons and limes and even my oranges. One of this, because the littler ones fit in here, the bigger ones fit in here, and you can really get all of the juice out. So I wanted to mention that.
I just want you to know that Doug Bennett said that if you don't have a shaker, you might not have gone to Trinity.
That would be too, that's silly me. Why would I think that?
It was the 80s, and remember the drinking age was younger. So of course we had flasks and shakers.
That's true.
We're getting wonderful feedback. Everyone's really been enjoying the mocktail. And I know for one, I really like a good mocktail, and I'm really excited to have one. So I think that, so that's just kind of just to give you the feedback. And I thought
I love that.
We should mention that at the end of this, you're going to give some links to some of this cooking equipment that you use so that people can find it, where they find it besides Amazon.
Yes, well, the links all go to Amazon, but it's on the last page of the packet. And I can go over that at the end. I can tell you some other places where I think you can buy those. I usually just put the Amazon links in since people are coming from all over the country. It's kind of hard, but there are some chains that I can talk to you about where you can get some of this stuff. Okay, other questions for now?
For now, no other questions. Just
okay.
Great. Well, actually, one other thing is just everyone attending would like Trinity to send them a pair of Trinity glasses.
Aren't they cute? I love those glasses. I know the last time I went back, I'm not sure they had them in that shape, but they're a really nice size and a really great glass. So hopefully they still have them in the bookstore. So anyway, now we are going to go on to the mushroom pate recipe. And I love this recipe. Cynthia's going to come up again because I created this recipe a few years ago when Cynthia was coming from Boston, where she lived then, to Denver, actually to visit her two sons who live here, the older of which is my godson. But she and her husband Tom were coming in, and I was having everybody over for dinner, and I wanted a new fun appetizer. And I had a bunch of mushrooms in my refrigerator. And so I ended up creating this recipe. And I really wanted to introduce it tonight because it's a basic pate that, yes, in post-COVID times, you can serve it as a dip with crackers, but during doing social distancing, I'm really trying to stay away from using spreaders, as I mentioned earlier. And so this recipe really adapts perfectly to work on toasted bread, sort of like a crostini. And I actually kind of got the inspiration for that idea because when I was talking to Trish and to Melissa about doing this cooking demo, they said, well, it's Women's History Month. And I went, oh, well, that's interesting. Well, let's kind of bring that in. And obviously there's a lot of famous women chefs over the years, Julia Child and all the ones everybody knows. But one of the ones that's always really resonated with me is Alice Waters. Because all those things that we now think are so important in our cooking, fresh ingredients, local ingredients, organic, and non-processed, Alice was doing all of that way before anybody else. She was really a pioneer. But how that ties back to this recipe is when she first opened Chez Panisse, one of the most popular appetizers was a mushroom crostini. So, which happens to be a favorite recipe of mine as well. It's different than my pate, but it's a really delicious recipe. I honestly don't know if it's in her cookbook or not because my Chez Panisse cookbook is in storage. But if you want that recipe, just let me know. You can contact me directly On every page of your packet on the bottom is my website and my email address. So if you want that recipe, email me and I'll send it to you. I found it online on a food blogger site, so I can send you the link. But anyway, let's go on to the mushroom recipe. I'm just going to turn this on and I'm going to ask my trusty assistant to come here and get that going for me.
Ready to really good.
I'm waiting to have mine till we're done. So anyway, let's just quickly talk about mushrooms. Okay, so this recipe, I like to use cremini mushrooms. Cremini mushrooms are also known as baby portobellos or baby bellas. Can you see that best? Probably if I just leave it there. And they look very similar to a white mushroom. Basically, the spectrum of mushrooms goes from white, and then the next step up is these brown ones, the baby bellas or the cremini, and cremini, I guess that's how you say it. And then the next step up would be a full portobello mushroom, the big ones. And so the flavor goes from mild to strongest, sort of less earthy to the most earthy. So these are kind of in the middle, which is why I like them. They have a little bit more flavor, a little bit more earthiness into the recipe. They're probably my favorite mushroom to cook with. So, and you usually can find them pretty regularly now. If I get a lot of questions about how you clean mushrooms, and I've gotten into arguments with chefs over professional restaurant chefs over this. Because a restaurant chef, you know, there's all this discussion, or maybe, I don't know if you guys follow a lot of food blogs, but there's a lot of discussion about whether or not you wash mushrooms because they're very absorbent. And it's like, oh, if you wash them, they're going to absorb water. And then, you know, you're going to have a hard time cooking them. It's not really true. If you wash them right before you cook them, then you can certainly rinse them and they're not going to have time to absorb water. My personal feeling is I don't feel like I get them very clean when I just put them in a strainer and run them under water. So what I like to do is take paper towel and get it wet, wring it out, and then take that and then just very quickly wipe around the heads of the mushrooms. And I know it looks a little tedious, but it goes really fast. And that's how much time, that's all it takes. And then if some of the skin is loose, you can take it off, but I just really find you get that grit out of there. I also don't particularly like to use the stems. If you do want to, and it's your choice, if you do want to use them, I really recommend cutting off the end because that can be rubbery, but I just sometimes find the stems are chewy. So I pull them out. And then, oh, I forgot to show you. Let me put that one back together again. That's one of the ways you can tell if a portobello mushroom is fresh, because you don't want to see a cremini or a baby bella is fresh. You don't want to see those little dark feathery things that are in there. With a full portobello, that's not that there, it's different part of its growth cycle, but with these, you really don't want to see that. So that's one of the ways to see if they're fresh. So I just pop up the stems and then just start chopping it. For this one, because I'm going to put them on the crostini, I'm going to chop them a little bit finer than just in half and sliced as the standard recipe calls for. I'm probably going to cut them into thirds and then just quickly chop them up. And then, remember, as you know, with mushrooms, they're going to shrink up. So, but I think that's going to be a pretty good size. So give me a second now. I am going to get the right camera on, and then I'm going to move my close-up back over here and take you over to the cooktop here. I'm just going to leave you on that camera because all you'd be doing is looking at my back. So anyway, I have already started this recipe. I melted the butter and then put in the chopped garlic and the mushrooms, and I've cooked it down. As you can see, the liquid is pretty much all out of this. I did that ahead. So now I'm going to go ahead and put in the dry sherry. When you cook with sherry, I like to use sherry, a nice sherry, but you don't need to go for really expensive stuff, but don't go for the super cheap stuff either, because you're putting it in to add flavor. So you want it to add some nice flavor and really use dry sherry. So then now what I'm going to do, put in the sherry and the green onions. And now I'm just going to stir this around. The sherry's just going to layer in some flavor in here, a little bit more into the mushrooms. The butter started that. I'm always a big one in my cooking about layering flavors. You saw that a little bit in the cocktail with the rosemary that went right into the simple syrup. So instead of just adding rosemary in as a garnish to maybe add some flavor, if you really cook it into the syrup, it really layers in that flavor really nicely and you get more of that flavor. And same, sherry just goes really, really well with mushrooms. If you're trying to stay away from alcohol, you could probably do this with chicken broth, or frankly, probably just skip this step if you wanted to.
What, one question was, what is the brand and size of the pan that you're using?
Oh, everybody always wants to know that. It is, it's All Clad Limited, which is actually a line of All Clad that I don't believe they make anymore. But they do have All Clad Limited too, and it's a stainless steel saute pan. When you see it, if you see it, it's kind of darker on the outside and then shiny on the inside. I'm sure you could probably find it, this exact pan on eBay, but my guess is All Clad still has something similar in one of the other, like the Limited 2 line or one of the other ones. So now I put in some chopped fresh thyme, and now I'm putting in the cream cheese. I've cubed up the cream cheese just because it's a little bit easier to get it to melt and blend in that way. And I'm just mixing that in. It just adds a nice sort of creaminess to it, a little bit slight tang. The thyme just brings in a little herbiness. It's just a really wonderful flavor of stuff that goes great with mushroom. One of the things for the crostini, I like to have, I'll show you in a minute when we get over to plate this, I like crostini that are small. And for this recipe, I like making them with a baguette. And sometimes baguettes can be, 2 to 3 inches or more, really more like 3 or 4 inches, which is, I just don't like them that big. And so I found, I know like people like Trish in New York who has, limitless resources can find the right size baguette anywhere. In Denver, and then we spend the majority of our time at our house up in the mountains. It's not so easy. And so there's a brand available in the Kroger grocery stores called La Brea Bakery. And the baguettes come in there and they're small. I'll show you. I love the size. Okay, so now while I'm finishing stirring.
Another question. What's the heat set in there? Are you doing this over low, medium, high? Like, what's the
temp? It was on medium until I added the cream cheese, and then I turned it down to low. And then once that cream cheese is completely melted, I'm going to turn the heat off. I put in the little bit of cayenne, and now I'm going to start adding some lemon juice. I get questions sometimes between like, well, how many tablespoons are in a lemon? And, it's hard to answer because, lemons can be this big or they can be this big. But the standard rule of thumb in sort of the recipe world is 1 average lemon equals 3 tablespoons. Because that can vary so significantly by lemon size, I always recommend starting little. Like this has got a whole lemon worth of juice in it. I put in half. And so I always recommend, I'm going to turn that off now because the cheese is melted. I always recommend putting it in and tasting it and then seeing what you think. So at this point now, I'm also going to quickly put in some salt and pepper.
Lee, one question came up. Are any other ideas that you could make this recipe with other than mushrooms?
Oh, wow. That's an interesting question. Let me see, with the cream cheese and the sherry and the lemon, it might be good with crab if you're a seafood eater, or maybe some cooked shrimp. That might be a possibility. I don't know. I haven't tried it. Okay, so then I just put in some toasted pecans and mixing it together. One thing I wanted to mention about the lemon, and then now I'm going to taste it. I'm big on tasting. Taste, taste, taste. Okay, perfect. I already put in too much lemon. If you put in too much lemon, don't reach for the sugar. Before you reach for the sugar, reach for the salt. And very slowly add more salt. I'm not a chemist. Maybe somebody else on the call or on the Zoom is, but it's a chemical relationship. And so if you get something too tart, just add more sugar. I mean, don't add sugar, add more salt. You know, sometimes if you're making a tomato sauce and you have some really acidic tomatoes and there's almost like a tartness to the sauce and you feel like, wow, I should add some sugar to this. Add salt first. You'll be amazed. Just do it slowly so you don't get it too salty at the same time. And it works every time. So here are my crostini. Let's see, let's do it this way. Here are my little crostini. I need to get a clean spoon. And see how little they are? I mean, I just love the size of these little La Breas. They are really a 2-bite and no more than that, little crostini. And then to finish this recipe off, all you do, okay, first of all, what I really recommend and what I like to do is to take this mushroom pate and you know, put it like in a Tupperware or a bowl and cover it and refrigerate it and really let the flavors blend, because you need to really let it sit for a couple hours, let that thyme get infused in there, let that sherry get infused in the lemon, and really let everything mellow together in a beautiful way, and let the flavors rest. And then I take it out and you just simply put it on the little crostinis like this. Sorry, I'm trying to figure out where the best place is to show you. There you go. That's a little more like that. And then if you want, you can, I had some thyme here. I don't know what I did with it. You can just take some thyme leaves, and you know, the best way to really get thyme leaves off quickly, the leaves grow up this way, take it with the leaves going up, and then you just pull your fingers down, and then you can just scatter some of those on the top. You know, if you want to put a bigger piece on there, you could even put a twig on there. It just makes it really nice. And they're super yummy, super delicious. Okay, any other questions about the mushroom recipe before we go on?
Oh no, they want to know the name of the dogs.
Oh, Karina and Tina. They're both looking at me now. They're Legato Romagnolos, which are the Italian water dogs, also known as the truffle hunting dogs in Italy. So, and they're very cute. You might get to see them before the end of the evening. Okay, I now am going to move on to the shrimp recipe. This shrimp, these are called what I call shrimp curry bites. This is a new recipe that I created just for my March classes. So it's.
Sorry, Lee, one quick question back to the mushroom.
Sure.
What temperature do you serve them at?
I serve them at room temperature. I really think works the best. Okay, I love this recipe. I've been working on this recipe for a really, really long time, and just couldn't really get it right. And finally, about a month ago, I figured out the right combination of flavors, and I was quite excited. Okay, let me see. Let me get you guys far enough away. So sorry, that was probably making you dizzy. All right, so one of the things I want to talk about in this recipe before we get going is about shrimp. This recipe calls for 12 ounces of cooked, shelled, deveined shrimp. If, like me, you live in the middle of the country, so you're going to be buying your shrimp frozen, you need to keep in mind that frozen cooked shrimp, weighs more than thawed cooked shrimp, because it ends up with a lot of water in it. And so when you thaw it, that water goes away. When I was setting up for this recipe for tonight, I bought a pound of shrimp, frozen, cooked, shelled, thawed it, and then dried it out, and it weighed 13.7 ounces, not 16. So excuse me, I just realized I need to grab the shrimp. I forgot to do that.
Lee, one question on this recipe is, can the shrimp be made without curry?
Yes, definitely.
Cool.
definitely. You know, you could probably, yeah, I mean, I'm not even sure I would add something else, but yeah, you could if you're not a curry fan. You definitely could. So, and then speak on the subject of the shrimp as well. Once I thought my favorite way to thaw the shrimp is in a colander under kind of tepid running water. It doesn't take very long to thaw it that way. Or you can put it in your refrigerator in a colander, like on a tray, so the water drains off as it thaws. But I like to, you can see here in the big camera, I think, put the shrimp on a double layer of paper towel on a pan and just let it drain and dry that way. And then I'll take another paper towel and pat the top and just let it sit there while I make the rest of the recipe so that it really gets nice and dry, because you don't want this to get watery. You know, and if it sits for any length of time, as you know, if you've ever made a shrimp sort of a appetizer recipe without getting enough water out, it can get watery. So we don't want that. So in the Cuisinart,
what type of curry powder do you use? That was another question.
you know, it's a good question because there's a lot of different kinds of curry out there. You know, because as you know, curry is a blend. There's a local spice store in Denver called Savory Spice, where I really like to go and buy my curry. And I just try different ones. But what I also wanted to show you that I got for making the recipe tonight was this one, because I found it at Whole Foods, and I've seen it at a number of different Whole Foods. You know, Robert and I travel around the country and do cooking demonstrations and I do cooking demonstrations on TV and do book signings and stuff. So I'm buying ingredients all over the country, and I've been able to find this Frontier Co-op in Whole Foods in a number of different cities. And I happen to think it's a very good blend. So it's a good one. Oh, the other thing with curry too, good to keep in mind, like you'll notice in here, I'm pretty far down in the jar. So this has been open for a little bit longer. So I might need a little bit more. You always need to keep in mind with any of your jarred spices that once you open it, when you first open it, it's going to be the most fresh, the most flavorful, the most pungent. And then the longer it sits in there, that flavor is going to start to decline. So I always tell people to kind of think about that when you're measuring in spices. If you just open the jar, you might want to start with a little bit less and taste it. Conversely, if you're at the bottom, definitely start with what the recipe calls for and see if you don't need to add a little bit more. So what's in the Cuisinart in here is the cream cheese, which I cubed up and put in here with the butter and the mayonnaise. And that's already been blended up just to get us a little bit of a head start. And so what I'm going to put in next, you don't need to mix these ahead. I just did this as a time saver, but there's the garlic powder and the curry powder in here. And if you are a non-garlic lover, or you have friends that can't eat garlic or don't like garlic, you can certainly leave out the powder and throw some chopped fresh shallots in here. Or if they're vampires, my husband says. But, and so you can just throw some chopped shallots in or just leave it out altogether. But shallots would go nicely in this too. And then in here I have the Worcestershire sauce, the lemon juice, the Tabasco, what am I forgetting? Dijon mustard. So I'm gonna pour all that in there, and then I'm gonna turn this on. Add some cranks. We're gonna need to scrape it down a little bit. Get this going. This recipe is one as well that you could serve as a dip post-COVID if you want. But again, I love it in the bites. You're going to see in a minute that I just like to serve it in those little mini Phyllo Tartlets, I guess they're called, or tarts that you can buy just in a box in the freezer section at your grocery store. If you are doing a recipe that you want to use those tarts for and you're in, it's not all completely mixing together. You can probably see that down in there, but I'm just going to stir it together because it's a little bit by hand because the liquid's kind of getting stuck in the middle. But one thing, if you're going to be doing a recipe with the little tartlets around the holidays, I would suggest buying them in advance and throwing them in your freezer, because I've gotten stuck before where the grocery store runs out. So now I put some chopped green onion in there, some chopped cilantro. If you're not a cilantro person, cilantro tastes like soap to you. I don't know if you all know this or not, but that's actually genetic. You have a certain gene, and if you have that gene, cilantro tastes like soap. So if you have that gene, or one of your family members does, or a friend does, just use parsley. Chopped fresh Italian parsley would be just as good in this. Just gonna, I do go ahead and chop the onion and the cilantro ahead of time for this, because I found if you put it in big hunks, by the time the Cuisinart is done chopping it, you've really kind of overmixed a little bit the rest of the ingredients. So I don't like to do that. Okay, so now we're going to take this out. Just scrape that off.
Just while you're cooking, a couple of questions.
Okay.
Where do you get those beaker measuring containers?
Oh, these I got, I didn't put a link in for these. They're made by OXO, OXO. You can get them on Amazon. I've also seen them at Bed Bath & Beyond. But anywhere that they sell that OXO brand, you should be able to find them. They're my favorite. I really love them. So I'm going to scrape this out. I'm not going to worry too much about getting every single bit out, because I'm going to chop the shrimp in here next, and then it's all going together in the end. I just find that if you try to put the shrimp in here and chop it with everything else just gets over processed. So it's better just to do that, just to take that part out and then quickly do the shrimp. My husband's asking a question. I don't know if you can hear him. I purposely didn't give him a mic.
I want to know if cilantro tastes like soap to you. How do you know what soap tastes like?
He wants to know, he said, if cilantro tastes like soap to you, how do you know what soap tastes like? Well, if you're the generation of me and my classmates, it would be if you said something bad as a child, you got to sit with a bar of soap in your mouth. But anyway, so I have, I'm putting the shrimp in here. I find that I think medium is the perfect size shrimp for this recipe, because it's small enough to chop up quickly, but not so small that you end up with a shrimp puree. Because you don't want it too pureed. You want it just, you still want some hunks of shrimp in there. I just take it, oops, here we go, kind of moving. There you go. Just do this, just take some pulses. This is going to be really yummy if you live in an area where you actually get to buy shrimp fresh versus those of us in this part of the world. But they're doing a really good job with the frozen. So anyway, it's chopped. That, so just so you can really kind of see the consistency in there. Okay. And then, honey, if you can take the Cuisinart out of the way. Thank you. I'll bring this over here. And then dump the shrimp that's now sort of picked up any of the sauce that I left in the Cuisinart. And then you just stir it all together. And then you put it in those little phyllo cups. And then if you want, you can garnish it with more chopped cilantro or parsley, more chopped onion. Sometimes I find it just almost doesn't even really need a garnish, because it's got all these really pretty green flecks through it. And it's sort of that pretty, kind of goldeny, yellowy, slightly greeny curry color, with the flecks from the onion and the cilantro already. And you've got the little pink pieces of shrimp showing through. So it's really pretty. So you just stir all that.
Lee, while you're stirring.
Yep.
If someone lives in the Denver area and, wants to find about cooking classes or demonstrations you're doing, what's the best way to find you?
On my website. Or follow me excuse me, follow me on social media. My brand name, I didn't mention that earlier, my bad, is A Well-Seasoned Kitchen. So you'll see again in your packet on every page is my website, but there's an event tab in there. But I will always also post stuff on Facebook for sure. And sometimes on Instagram if I can figure out how to do that, but always on Facebook. So here are the little Phyllo Tartlets. I did just cook these off per the box instructions. So you put them in a, I don't know, I think it's like a 350-degree oven or something for like 4 or 5 minutes, just till they get crispy and kind of sometimes get this little tinge of color on them. And then you take this, oh, you salt and pepper it too, which I didn't do, but that's okay. I'll do it later. And then I just take a spoon and kind of fill them in there like that. And then, like I said, if you want, you could do some green onion, or I just happen to have some chopped cilantro here. And then you can just, you know, sprinkle the little leaves on the top, give it a little pop on the plate like that, and then serve them. And again, you can make the shrimp ahead. I would recommend, again, probably making it ahead, letting it sit for an hour or two, let those flavors really get all nicely blended together. I don't know if I mentioned this with the mushroom, but usually after I've let something sit, I do this. If you have one of my cookbooks or look at the recipes on my site, you'll see me talking about letting things sit a lot, because letting those flavors blend, I think, is really important. But then after you've let it sit, you should taste it again. And just make sure, you know, maybe with this one, does it need a little more curry powder? Does it need a little more salt? Does it need something else? And then you can adjust it before you serve it. And I would serve these also at room temperature. Like the mushroom croustades. Okay, so we have one more thing. How are we doing on time? Oh, we're not doing too bad. Okay, and the next one is really actually pretty quick.
Hey, Lee, I was able to put your website on, oh wait, Bonnie put in, I wanted the Instagram account. So I'm just trying to put these things in the chat. So
I'm Seasoned Kitchen on everything. Pinterest, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube I might be, but it's a little bit trickier to get there because some little girl in Taiwan decided she wanted it. I don't know why, because I own that on every other TikTok. I own it on everything except I think you have to put something else in there on, but anyway, if you go to YouTube and put in A Well-Seasoned Kitchen or put in Lee Roper Seasoned Kitchen, you'll go to my page. Okay, the last recipe that we're making is called prosciutto, fig, and goat cheese tarts. This recipe is in my second cookbook, Fresh Tastes. It is super easy. It is, as you can tell with all these recipes, because something that's always been pretty important to me is being able to make stuff ahead. And all these recipes you can make ahead, and this one you have to make ahead because you really need to freeze them before you bake them. If you don't, actually, let's turn this around. If you don't, they're gonna blow up out of their little tins. So I'll tell you about that in a sec. Okay. So prosciutto, fig, and goat cheese tarts. This is a riff on a recipe that's in my first cookbook, A Well-Seasoned Kitchen, called Cheddar Chutney Tarts. In terms of that, it's the same technique, which is what we're gonna do is just take purchased puff pastry. You get a sheet out, you thaw it. You know, it's important to work with puff pastry when it's cool. So you thaw it, as I'm sure you know from the box, at room temperature, 35, 40 minutes, it should be thawed, you're ready to go. But if it starts to get too warm while you're working with it, or you left it out too long, you're gonna wanna put it back in the refrigerator and chill it up again a little bit, because if it gets too warm, it gets really stretchy and difficult to work with, and you're not gonna be happy with the results. So that's my tip on puff pastry. So this mat I'm using is, you have a link to this on the last page in your packet, and it's called Dough Easy. Dough Easy. And you can get this on Amazon. Here it is. That's what it looks like. See, this is how we roll. No fuss, no floury mess, because you don't need to use flour with this mat. And it comes with these really cool guides. So like if you're rolling out cookies and pastry, you can put the guides down. And then if you need to be 1/8 of an inch thick or 1/4 of an inch thick, you don't need to worry. So it's really cool. And then on this side, there's guides for the size of your, you know, how far you want, if you want to do 14-inch round, 12-inch, 9-inch, it's all here. There's a ruler around the outside. So it really makes things easy. And I really, and it doesn't stick. Actually, when you're, I'm not going to do it now, and I'll show you why in a minute, but you can actually fold this over and roll here. If you're doing pie dough, I find it still needs a little bit of flour. The other thing that I really like, and it was so funny when I did one of my first cooking classes and somebody's like, what's that thing on your rolling pin? Well, I was raised in a household with a mother who had this on a rolling pin. So I just thought everybody did. It's like a sleeve and it fits over your rolling pin. And again, you need minimal flour to keep it from sticking. Comes off, goes in the washing machine. I usually have 2. If I'm doing any gluten-free cooking, I'm going to use one. I only use it for that, even though I wash it. And then I have a second one for doing the rest of my cooking. So if I've got my gluten-free friends coming over, I can be safe for them. So, and we didn't talk about that earlier, by the way. Remind me, I'll come back to gluten-free because you can easily do gluten-free versions of the other 2 recipes. This one's a little bit harder. But anyway, I've already pre-rolled this out. Might have shrunk a little. I had it, oh no, it's still the right size. And so you roll it out and then you cut into 2-inch squares. So you can kind of just get your guide up there. What I usually do is kind of put it up there and then come down here, go over around 2 inches, connect the dots. You can get a ruler to help you too and just put a ruler down. And then you just cut this into 2-inch squares, just like that. That one might be a little bit small. Some of these might be, and if you end up, you know, you find, oh, it's not, you know, maybe cut it a little small, you can just pull them like this and get them apart. And then what you're going to do is take a mini muffin tin. Let's move you over a little bit. Take a mini, I've already done some of these up here, but I'll show you down here. You take a mini muffin tin, you put your little square in there, and then you can push it down gently with your fingers like that. Or you can put it in and then use this, which is called a mini pastry tamper. And you have a link for this too. The Pampered Chef brand is the one I bought about, I don't know, 20 years ago, 25 years ago. And this is it. And I still use it. And you can get this exact one on Amazon, but there's a lot of them that look like this. And they're really great to have for when you're putting things in mini muffin tins. For a recipe for some mushroom croustades where you cut out rounds of bread. And the bread is a lot harder to get in there with your hands. You can just really push it down with this and get it to stay in there. So once you put the little pastries in there, then you take a fork, you poke it once or twice in the bottom. Then you're going to take some fig spread. This is just the standard Dalmatia fig spread that you can get any major grocery store that I've been in. They have it in the deli, and there's different brands and different kinds. You can play around with it and substitute different things, but I really like this particular brand. And then you're just going to put a little bit in each one. It's the exact measurement. I don't remember, teaspoon, a half a teaspoon. I don't remember what I put in there. And then you're going to sprinkle some chopped prosciutto. You can just get any prosciutto. I'm partial to Italian, getting the Italian ones. I find for this recipe though, if I go to the deli counter in my grocery store and buy it there, I can control how thick they cut it, because prosciutto tends to be shaved really thin if you buy it pre-cut, which makes it harder to chop. So if you go to the deli counter, then you can buy slices a little bit thicker and it's a little bit easier to chop up for this recipe. I also trim off some of the real fatty ends so somebody doesn't end up with a big hunk of fat. And then what I'm doing is putting some goat cheese in here, some goat cheese crumbles, sprinkling it in. I just bought these as crumbles. One thing I want to point out to you, this is this Vermont brand. When you're buying like feta cheese, blue cheese, goat cheese, crumbles, if you're buying pre-shredded cheese, please, please, please check the ingredients. This does not have it because I bought it, but sometimes, often, there's an ingredient called cellulose. Cellulose is ground cardboard. So obviously the FDA has allowed it in small doses, but if you eat a lot of cheese and a lot of stuff that's pre-shredded and crumbled, you're eating a lot of ground cardboard, which can't really be good for you. So I recommend staying away from it. And it's just a quick scan of the ingredients. With goat cheese crumbles and feta, I've always been able to find ones. Parmesan cheese is the same. I've always been able to find them that don't have the cellulose in them. It's harder with grated cheese. You might have to grate your own cheese if you eat as much cheese as I do, and stay away from that. But with the crumbles, Parmesan Romano, it's not a problem. So anyway, once you get these all filled, then you freeze this till they're frozen solid. And then what I do is usually then just pop them out of the little thing and put them in a Ziploc baggie, frozen, back in my freezer. And then they're ready to go. You can make them up to 2 months before your party. Excuse me. And they're ready to go. You take them back out of the baggie, put them back in the tins and bake them when they're frozen. And I mean, they can thaw a little while the oven's preheating, but you don't want to thaw them too much, because if you cook these when they're not frozen, the insides can kind of blow up. You know, the pastry puffs too much and it sort of blows everything out and it kind of runs all over the pan. It makes a mess, doesn't look very pretty. And so, speaking of looking pretty, when they are, okay, let me see. Now I have to get back to my Zoom. I'm just going to share my screen. Okay, that's what they look like when they're cooked. So they're just really pretty. They're, you know, they're a little puffy. They've got some wonderful flavors going on between the, you know, just between the prosciutto and the cheese, the tang of the cheese and the sweetness of the fig, and it just really blends together, and it's really super fun flavors and super fun to serve, and looks pretty on the plate. All those things that were important to my mom and are important to me too. Okay, Trish, are there questions before I go on to the last few things? Just some comments.
Oh, mainly the comments are, we love all the fun facts. You know,
Oh,
the cellulose, you know, me personally, I love the cilantro fact because my husband hates it. And I really love to know one average lemon is about 3 tablespoons, because I'm too lazy to squeeze it into the spoon. You know, so I'm a guesstimator. I'm a home cook guesstimator. And I love knowing that fact.
Good,
Thank
good.
you.
Well, I'm glad. You're welcome. So on page 8, oh, here, let me get rid of this. You don't need 2 screens now. I'm just going to be talking. Unless you ask me a question, I need to show you.
One question that came up is, any other tips for drinks to go along with these appetizers?
You know, I was thinking about this. On my website is my family's, and well, really my adaptation of my mother's family's mint julep recipe, which is, you'll see a lot of similarity. It has a simple syrup that's the difference. My mom's family recipe, what I added in is I put a mint infused simple syrup in there to make into it, but that would also go in this. My husband's Manhattan recipe, which is, I think, on the website. It's in my cookbook, Fresh Taste. I'm pretty sure I put it on the website. And his martini recipe, which is on the website, would go really well with these. I think most rum drinks would go too, I think would really blend well with these recipes. So on page 8 of your packet are some other ideas for 1 and 2 bite appetizers. I'm going to share my screen again. This, and these are just some things that you can quickly do for, 1 and 2 bite or social distance. I really should say they're not necessarily 1 and 2 bite ideas for serving hors d'oeuvres, appetizers. And you can see them in the picture. One is you just take a little small plastic or glass. These little ones that you see in the photo are plastic. They come from Party City, but you can get little glass ones. I've seen a ton of them at Bed Bath, and just put, fill it half, 3/4 full with your favorite veggie dip recipe or ranch dressing, ranch dip, something, and then just put spears of fresh vegetables in there. You can do, like in the picture, that's red pepper and celery and carrot, and you can do a little piece of asparagus, whatever you want. Another one up here on the top is a dessert one. So if you want to put out something sweet, same idea, but just put, like, that's a parfait of pound cake and a strawberry salsa. You can do chocolate mousse in there. You can do shot glasses with your, favorite soups in them. I've done both hot and cold. Works the best kind of with pureed or quasi pureed soups. So, and then if you want to serve a dip, you really want to serve like a dip that goes with crackers, just put together little individual plates. If you're doing a smaller social distance gathering, maybe you're going to have 4 friends over, have a small plate for each one. Or if you're having 4 couples, do like a shared plate for each couple. I find a chargeur plate is the perfect size for sort of a shared couple thing, especially if you're doing like a cheese and prosciutto plate. So there's a lot of ways that you can do this and really keep it so that people are safe and comfortable. On the page 9 of your packet, I promised in the description for the class that I would talk to you about how to make menus work for appetizers, how much food to plan for, how many portions, all of that. And it's not an exact science, but I explain it all on this page with some of my other tips. So how you put together a menu. So like what I was thinking about when I was putting these 3 hors d'oeuvres together. And this applies also, most of what's on here would also apply if you're doing a dinner party menu. And then the last page is where you have links to the different places to buy the various products that I talked about. The only one I didn't talk about was the garlic press, which I'll just quickly mention. Let me stop sharing my screen so you can see. I like this. I like these ones, and there's several different brands. I think I linked to one because they're really easy to use and easy to clean. See how that comes completely apart? So when you do the press, put the garlic in there and then you push it, but then it just flips out. So it's super easy to clean. And I did a link to one of the brands. There's a page on my website that has all of my favorite kitchen tools on it. Actually, I'm going to put those OXO beakers on there because I realized I don't think they're on there. But you can go on there and get all of these as well. Like I said, everything links to Amazon just because nationally that's the easiest way to do it. Bed Bath & Beyond is a really good resource for a lot of these things. So is Sur La Table or Williams-Sonoma, either online or in the stores. But any of those major chains would also be a good place to go. And then just on the bottom of that page, I put links to where you can buy my cookbooks. So if you're interested, Amazon, Barnes and Noble always have both. Indiebound.org is a site that promotes all the independent bookstores around the country. So you can go in there. Those books I have no idea this is all handled through my distributor. So I have no idea who ever has inventory, but any of these links should take you to somebody who could order the book if they don't have it. The only one I check regularly, honestly, is Amazon, and they usually always have both books. So anyway, that is the end of my presentation. I'm sorry, only 10 minutes over. That wasn't too bad. So anyway, what other questions do you have?
It's mainly like everyone saying how much they enjoyed it, that they love. A couple of people are already fans. They own your cookbooks.
Oh yeah.
And they said it was educational and a lot of fun. And I want to thank you on behalf of the Women's Leadership Council and Trinity for agreeing to give your time to do this wonderful event. How great and inspirational, and we can't thank you enough. I want to say to all the participants that you're going to receive an email tomorrow with a post-event survey. This is important for the college and metrics, so if you wouldn't mind filling it out and giving us a positive rating, we'd appreciate it. And we're putting some stuff in the chat about the Women's Leadership Council Facebook page and a hopefully Instagram page. And we hope that you'll look on social media to find out about our upcoming events. And we hope that you'll come to more of our events. And everyone's just, on cloud nine. Thank you so much, Lee. I can't thank you enough. I mean, again, thanks.
I'm happy to do it. It was fun. Thank you.
Take care. Have a great evening.
Okay, bye.